Indonesia is the world's largest archipelago, with over 18,000 islands. But can you imagine that for centuries, this vast region was under the grip of people from thousands of miles away? If you don't know who they were and what they did to Indonesia, keep watching to find out. Our story begins in 1595, when the Dutch first set foot on the Indonesian island of Java, lured by the exotic spice trade. This Dutch arrival on the island of Java marked the beginning of a complex relationship between the Dutch and the Indonesian people. To control the spice trade, the Dutch formed the Dutch East India Company, or VOC, in 1602. They played a clever game of diplomacy, striking deals with local leaders to ensure their loyalty. But it was not all peaceful. Take the Banda Massacre in 1621, for example. The Dutch Governor-General ordered the brutal killing of Bandanese elders and thousands of others. Why? Because along with the Dutch, these elders were also trading their spices with the English. The Dutch, who wanted to keep their monopoly, saw this as a threat to their authority, so they had them all killed. It was a dark moment in history, showing the lengths the Dutch would go to maintain their grip on the trade. But soon, at the end of the 1700s, the global tastes shifted, and spices like nutmeg and cloves took a back seat. These spices became so common that people wanted to try different tastes. People became more intrigued by the French cuisine, for example, which was part of a larger trend towards classicism. Stepping into the 1800s, the Dutch realized that they could not solely depend on this trade, and they needed a new source of income. So they turned to sugar, coffee, tobacco, and cacao, which meant they had to expand their territories. And get this, they became successful in this too. In fact, at one time, the Dutch in Indonesia became the biggest exporters of coffee in the world. But the same thing happened again. Many other regions started exporting these goods as well, and the revenue from this trade declined again. Due to this, the VOC eventually went bankrupt in 1796. You might have an idea what the main reason was. Ultimately, the cost of running their vast empire just proved to be too much. The Dutch shifted their focus to their own country, where Napoleon was waging war after war. So the French and English saw an opportunity to swoop in and make their mark on Indonesia. But the Dutch did not stay away for long. They returned after Napoleon's defeat, and that is when the real trouble began. But before we tell you about that, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content. Now, let's get back to the video. After the wars with Napoleon, the Dutch were out of money, so they squeezed Indonesia to retrieve all the cash they lost. This was when they implemented the Cultivation System, or Cultivation in Dutch. This cultivation system forced a major shift in Indonesian agriculture. Instead of growing food for themselves, farmers were now growing crops like sugar, cocoa, coffee, and tobacco. These so-called cash crops were not meant for local consumption, but for export, filling the Dutch coffers. So it was no longer about feeding the people, it was all about generating revenue. The system was pretty harsh on the Indonesians, as they had limited choices: provide the Dutch with the demanded goods and work on the plantations to produce these crops, or face severe consequences. During this period, tensions escalated between the Dutch and the locals. One particular Indonesian leader resisted Dutch control, leading to a brutal guerrilla war that lasted 5 years. The conflict claimed the lives of about 200,000 people, which further destabilized the region. Back in the Netherlands, the Dutch were also at war with Belgium, which put even more strain on their finances, and in response, they tightened their grip on Indonesia. This exploitative system took a significant toll on the Indonesian people, leading to widespread suffering, poverty, and even famine. However, things started to change. This ongoing tension in the region eventually sparked a strong desire for change among the Indonesian people. Revolutionary leaders emerged advocating for the rights of the Indonesian people and pushing back against colonial rule. Workers began to unionize, fighting for better conditions and demanding an end to the exploitation they had suffered for so long. The struggle for independence gained momentum, and the Indonesian people joined forces to reclaim their sovereignty, which led to their independence in 1949. The Dutch also acknowledged Indonesia's sovereignty and left the region for good this time, Caught in the middle of the fight for freedom was the Indo-Dutch, the people with both Dutch and Indonesian heritage. They were stuck between two worlds, and to make matters worse, faced discrimination from both sides. They were not considered Dutch by the Dutch people, neither Indonesian by the Indonesians, but they did not let that get them down. Instead, they played a big part in shaping Indonesia's unique culture. They mixed traditions, customs, and even foods from both worlds, creating something truly special. We can still see Dutch influence in Indonesia's architecture today. If we take a stroll around Jakarta or Bandung, we will spot many buildings that are built on Dutch-style colonial architecture. The Dutch also left their mark in Indonesian cuisine. Their roti bakar, for example, is a toast-based snack famous in Indonesia that is made with both Dutch and Indonesian flavors. And it is not just in the food, it is in the words they speak as well. The Indonesian language has many Dutch words in it, well over 10,000 words to be exact. It goes to show how deeply the Dutch influence penetrated Indonesian society. Today, Indonesia is a beautiful mix of different cultures, showing off its rich history. But under this bright display, there is a darker past, a reminder of the tough times people faced and their strength to overcome it. With so much history to unravel, let us know in the comments if you'd like to know more about the intriguing yet often dark history of the Dutch in another video.